distorted. The tumbleweeds just, can you imagine trying to leave for work and this is what you have? It's crazy. They showed video of huge dumpsters and what are those things called to gather up all the great big machinery? They gather those up and throw them in the dumpsters, but it was crazy. Just like our earthly seasons can have really crazy weather, especially here in Utah, we get it sometimes. Our seasons of grief can have some crazy weather too. So you may have experienced the winds of grief like this. Right? It's real, it's real. Or maybe you are moving through your grief and you're feeling like, I am making headway. I'm feeling a little better, only to have this happen.
Про этой тренинг.
Relatable, right? And then maybe you feel about grief how this little girl feels about snow.
I don't like it either. I know. It's terrible, isn't it? Go away.
Exactly.
Go away, grief. And I feel the same way about snow. Go away, snow and grief. So, I am here today because of a couple of different losses I've experienced, but today I'm going to talk mostly about losing our youngest son. At 20 weeks pregnant, we found out that he had trisomy 13. And if you don't know what that is, it's kind of in the same family as trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome. But trisomy 13 is, most babies do not make it. And they usually pass away in the first trimester. So and this baby, I knew he was coming. I knew it. I had had the most beautiful experience 7 years before, letting me know that I had a son, another son, and I thought, wonderful, we'll have the sixth, he'll be number 6, and we'll be done. But if you count, it's funny how we fill in the middle of the story with when God gives us some guidance and impressions, but we actually had 2 more little girls that came before our son. So, boy, this was not how I pictured things going. When I found out he was pregnant, I was pregnant with him. I had these 20 weeks of pure bliss. I thought everything was fine, and then I get hit at 20 weeks pregnant. I find out that he is not fine. He's very sick. So we only have, I think, 2 family pictures of all of us together, which is kind of a mess, you know. but I love it. I'm so thankful to have it. I am preparing for this class. I really studied Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. And I love so much, you might want to put that on your to-do list. I'm sure you're getting all the ideas here, but Ecclesiastes teaches about opposites. Now, everything has its opposite, everything has its season, and so it just brings me peace knowing everything is just as it should be, even when it's a mess, even when it's so difficult, even when we don't plan for loss and really hard things in life. There's actually a season prepared for all of it. And I want you to know, I tell you this with my whole soul, if you have not felt or seen any purpose yet in your suffering, you will. You will, I promise you. So which season is your favorite as far as the earth seasons? How many of you love fall? Raise your hand if it's fall. Okay, do we have any winters out there? I'm not a winter either. We have a few winters, okay. We have a few winters. You might come to appreciate winter a little more after we get through this class. How about spring? Who loves spring? Got some springs out there. And how about summer? Summer is so good too. Yeah, I love everything but winter. And Utah, that's the only reason I stay, is because these 3 seasons are so wonderful. But I am learning, as I've studied grief and understanding the winter of grief, I'm learning to embrace more of the season of grief in our earth season of grief. So just like our earth's seasons of that they move through and they have transitions and growth and change, our seasons of grief work the same way. I love this quote by C.S. Lewis. God allows us to experience the low points of life in order to teach us lessons that we would never learn if we didn't go through them. Now, that word through is so important to understand with grief. I get so triggered when I have someone say to me, I should be over this by now. It's been 2 years. And I'm like, you don't get over losing somebody who is so integral to your life. You just don't get over it. But you can work through it. It'll be a process for your whole life, but it changes as the seasons do, and it becomes this beautiful, wonderful blessing. It can, if we learn to embrace it with our Savior, Jesus Christ. So, the fall is a time to let go. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. It's a time to surrender. So, I quoted this from our last class, from a different quote from The Haunted Mansion. If you haven't seen that movie, the new one that came out last summer, it's really good. There's lots of really good lessons on grief. And Harriet says towards the end of the movie, grief unprocessed will make a spirit stuck. And she was talking about the spirits that have died, that have gone to the other side. But I was like, yeah, it'll make us humans stuck as well if we don't process and work through your grief. And I just praise all of you for being here today, because you're taking major steps in doing that. It takes courage and work to process through our grief. So, what happens when we can't? We're stuck in grief. When we're stuck in grief, then the fall, we can't even get into the season of fall. Fall kind of is the catalyst for all the other seasons. Now, here I've got just a few ideas as to why maybe you have felt, or maybe you are feeling today stuck in grief. Maybe you feel robbed of what your life was supposed to look like. You know, as soon as I knew that we had another son, I planned out his whole life. I could see it. I could see him being with his brothers and his sisters doting on him, because it had been a lot of years since we had boys. We had like 4 girls in a row. And so I could see it. It was going to be amazing. Maybe you feel as if God made a mistake. Maybe you feel betrayed by him. Those are real feelings. And it might be that you feel guilt or regret over things that you didn't say or you did say. I felt both of these things on the day our son passed. So trisomy babies have problems with their heart, with their brain, and they have oftentimes some facial deformities. And so our little guy had a bilateral cleft lip and palate. And so when I saw him, I was just concerned that my kids would be upset by how he looked, because he didn't look like the other babies that they had seen. And so I thought, well, okay, what if we get him a bath and, clean up all the birth, and then I'll put him in this cute little outfit I got him and I brought with a blanket. And so I handed him off. It was like shortly after he was born, I handed him off to the nurse. And when she returned him to me, he was gone. And I felt so much guilt. What was I thinking? And how many of you can relate? I was in shock. Like, I was dealing with some shock there, and so I'm not thinking straight. And so I just felt so much guilt that had I caused him to pass sooner than what he would have? I don't know, but that weighed on me. And then my regret came in from not getting a chance to talk to him. We only had about an hour, and so I didn't get to say so many things that were in my heart for him. And so I had some regret there too. And so that is common. We don't get a blueprint of how our loved ones are going to go. We don't, even when we deal with anticipatory grief and we know it's coming, we still cannot know how we're gonna act in the moment. And so these are normal feelings to have. And I'm gonna talk about how we can work through those as we move through this presentation. But I want to give you a little advice from my therapist. Now, everybody has their little paper with a cactus on it. Get ready, we're going to use that paper. So I'm talking to my therapist. It was a few years ago, and I was grieving. It wasn't loss of life. It was in another area of my life. And I was telling him how everything should be. And I was trying to control these certain things. And I was adamant that this is the way it should be. And I knew best. And he's just looking at me like, okay. He's like, Becky, listen to me. You can either keep trying to control the situation. You can hang on to all the ways you think this should be and try and make these things happen. Or you can drop the cactus. And that jolted me. I sat there and I pictured immediately hanging on to these thoughts and beliefs that I had that were causing me so much pain that I couldn't do anything about. I was gripping shoulds, I was gripping guilt, regret, some anger, and yet I couldn't do anything about it. And so there's no way I would ever pick up a cactus and hang on to it and grip it, and yet we do that sometimes with our grief. We have these past thoughts, these regrets, the guilt, all these things that cause us so much pain when there is an option to surrender and to let go. It's also important to note that Satan works on us. He doesn't let up when we're dealing with grief. He works on us just as hard. So these feelings of anger, these feelings of guilt and regret, they are not fruits of the Spirit. They are causing us to pull back from our Father in heaven, pull back from our Savior. So I have noticed just this year, I've never really paid much attention to this, but it's a thing. Sometimes trees do not drop their leaves. I work at the Jordan River Temple every Saturday morning, and I've been paying attention and noticing for a few months now that there's like 4 trees that are just hanging on. And I keep watching, are they gonna be on this leaf? Are they not? Nope, they hang on. And there's actually a word for it, marcescence, meaning to shrivel. And it literally means withering but persistent. Think about that. Think about those thoughts and those beliefs that we hang on to. We're persistent with them. Can we prosper when we've got those things circling in our heads? We can't, can we? We're just stuck and we're withering, but we keep persisting in it. So I thought this is so interesting. Now, there is good news. I researched it, and because I wondered, gosh, is these trees just going to skip spring and summer this year, and what's going to happen? But when the blooms begin to come out on those little branches, they pop those leaves off. And I thought, well, how's that relate to grief and to our experience? And I thought, well, I guess when the Savior comes, he's going to take care of everything. So that's going to be something that happens. But we actually have our agency that we can do some things about it today. So we don't have to wait to feel better till Jesus comes. There's going to be some really great things going on. But we can feel better today as we